and John Kai Herbert here to have a chat about we'll see where we go with it all, right? We'll see how it flows. But yeah, we had a call before actually. Maybe introduce yourself first if you would like to, John.
Yeah, sure. So my name is John Kai Herbert, as your host Luke introduced me as, and for me, I'm an exhilarating relationships consultant. So if you need help in working through your relationships, usually with yourself first, and then I can prepare you for having a longer term relationship if that's something that you desire. But ultimately, I help you trust yourself, relating to yourself and relating to others. Short and sweet of it.
Cool, awesome, man. So we're speaking about we do a call each week every Monday, and we're speaking on the phone earlier about there's a point in your life, right, where things go like really good, and obviously like life's up and down, right? But I'm at the point in my life now, my health is good, money's good, everything's going really well, and then usually there's always something that's like, oh, this happened, or this happened, or this happened, and today was just like, I want to set some goals, I want to have the metaphorical branches that reach up further, and the roots feel like they're solid. So let's go with that. And what came up for me for the conversation was around rigidity and type A personalities. Will get this. Any type A personality types listening, being that there's this. I wouldn't say actually type A. I'd say more to do with like perfectionism and type A. Like you want to get everything done, but you want to be perfect about it. So one of the things that came up this morning in our conversation was around rigidity and how when I'm like say for example, setting goals, I can't just set the goal by itself and say, here's 4 arbitrary goals that I want to set. It's a process of like, I need to create spreadsheets for this, and I do a habit tracker. If it's not done all the way, it's not done properly. And to speak into before, like what came up for me was that when that occurred, it was very hard for me to find that middle lane where I enjoyed the process, where I enjoyed doing the task because I was so caught up in all the small bits because of what a word that I learned from you, which was rigidity. So yeah, I just want to speak about that a bit and just get your thoughts on, I mean, characterology as well, but also rigidity. And feel free to use me as an example. But I feel like those out there who set goals and have that feeling of rigidity in the background and like kind of like, oh, if I don't do it properly, it's not done at all, and it kind of holds them back from living the life they want. I'd love for you to speak about that a bit, man, if you'd like to.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. And yeah, I really feel like those that are rigid
Mm.
love the value that they get from their rigidity and that perfectionism. Like it holds you in good stead with other perfectionists because you get rewarded for it. It's like, nah, Luke, fuck, man, your level of detail, beautiful, and you feel like that charge of, yeah, I'm perfect. Yeah, I'm really good. You can really feel like who I am. I need to maintain this perfection. And what happens in that is when an individual gets stuck in the loop, they can only ever be perfect. And that'll show up in your body. And when I say rigidity, when we talk to rigidity, um, it most shows up in coitus when you're being physically intimate with someone. You don't know how to move your whole body freely, and it can show up in dance. So dancing, I don't know. This is where we're going apparently. So with dancing, you can see someone who's a rigid dancer, and in that this is beyond learning how to dance like salsa or something where you learn how to move your hips in particular movements because you can perfect that. But then when you need to be authentic and original and need to move with you in your own agility and your whatever is occupied for you in your impulse, you can find that you're stuck. And this rigidity is something that appears in your body when you go to speak authentically, when you go to have an authentic touch with someone, particularly in relationships where you'll feel like an urge to go and kiss someone, and then you're like, oh, it is now the right moment, and you kind of like stutter in this thing, and then that can play out in business where you want to get a bunch of not consultants, but consult other people in the business in order to make a decision. So no, in my corporate career, I was rewarded for just doing the things. Like I'd do it and then ask for forgiveness later if I made a mistake. So there was
Mm.
something in that, the power of being able to make a decision on my own, not being paralyzed by needing to get it perfect, which made me excel as a leader and which I think I also take into my entrepreneurship here, and wasn't when I'm working with clients. So when I'm working with a client, I allow this space of possibility of where the client can go. Because if I just stuck to my toolkit and my technology, I'll be trying to force you to be something that you're actually not. And I think that's a paradigm that exists in the DSM and other technologies that you want to deploy in order to fit you into a box, which doesn't honor you as an individual.
Yeah, and the solution we come up with, or at least that I feel like that is the answer to that. It's like that. It's a process, right? Like it takes time to get to that point. But for me, it was like when do I feel most fulfilled, right? When do I feel most alive? It's like it's in the middle, like, and I see this with other people who, like Tony Robbins, for example, when I visit his website or when I go to his programs in the past, I'm like, I found little flaws with it. I'm like, there's a flaw here, a flaw there. I'm like, this guy's been doing this for 30, 40 years. Like, how could he get these things wrong? Or like anywhere, there's always something that can be improved on, right? When I'm watching the UFC, it's like, oh, they couldn't cut this properly. The graphics are off here. And it's noticing all the little details. And then you realize, right? It's like, well, if these huge companies and these huge practices aren't worrying about the small details, then why should you in your own life? You know? So the solution that we came to was that middle feeling, and again, it takes time to come to that middle feeling of like, I've done enough, like I've done
Mm.
enough for this to push forward. I've done enough for this to feel okay. I've done enough to like what's the word I'm looking for? It's just enough. You
Yeah,
feel okay with the work you've done, and I feel like that is the next phase for me. And anyone listening who is that rigid archetype of like perfectionism, and I've met a lot of them because they tend to attract each other, especially in relationships, which we can tap into as well. My ex actually was like that. She was more of a perfectionist than me. Like she was like in it, like she like this, what this, we're gonna plan this, take this. I'm like, it'll be fine. I was the one that wasn't rigid, which is saying something, right? And there's always a positive side to this as well. Anyone listening is like, oh no, I'm doomed. There's a positive side, right?
totally.
But yeah, the solution I came across is that middle ground. It's like, when have I done enough? And just stopping right there. So I've done enough now. All good.
Mm.
And then
That's
we
a
can adjust as we go. So
totally. Yeah, I love that, Luke. And that enoughness appears in the body. So for someone who's been raised as a rigid, that enoughness you can miss that moment because
yeah.
you've been encouraged by your parents to never be enough. Like you're not
Mm,
enough. You're not enough. So you're when am I? It's like running on a treadmill. When am I going to be enough? When am I going to be enough? And that enoughness can come in that awareness moment where you're at a laptop screen, when you're reading a book, when you're reading when you're like listening to podcasts about something, and you forget
uh,
where your breath is, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you take a breath, take a step away from the laptop or whatever it is, and you just check in with yourself. Am I hungry? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Because a rigid can like cut off all of their physical needs and just like go deep into whatever it is that they need to do. And that's one piece. The other piece is when you were saying like you go on a Tony Robbins website and you see people that you see the mistakes. What also can show up in the characterology dynamic and the relationship dynamic, and particularly in business, is you have employees that don't have the same level of detail that you do, right?
yeah. No. Yeah,
And
yeah.
what can happen here? Alex Hormozy spoke to this brilliantly. I watched one of his podcasts, one of his episodes recently on
Which
YouTube.
one?
It's one about sales. It's something about sales and inspiring the willpower. It was willpower in sales, and then he said he got
Ah.
the best conversions happened on the Saturdays at his gyms when they had people wrapping up their program and the
Mm-hmm.
sales staff was there, everyone was there, and the people would buy on that day. The people that were operating the sales, the calls, were so
Yeah.
inspired by watching other people have the breakthrough that they had the feedback loop of like, oh wow, look at all what everyone's getting. So they believed that the product that they were selling was amazing. Like so, Alex Hormozy speaks to us like when someone who's a religious fanatic, and the conversions in people who are religious. Like, all you
Yeah.
need to do is sell someone that the religion works, and a preacher hasn't done any sales training, but you get him up on a
Yeah.
pulpit and he's like all inspirational, especially the evangelical Christians. all
Oh
inspirational
god, yeah.
this and that, and like God and this and Jesus that, and it's inspirational. So people are like all of a sudden, oh, I've got to be one of these. Like save me, save me. So in that, being able to inspire your staff that the products that you're creating are inspirational, and then that level of that level of willpower and transference of the importance is given to your staff members. And with a staff member, if finding that ability to be committed and devoted to what they're doing is the other piece. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And this can show up in relationships too. Like a rigid is a
Mm.
classic for half-hearted relationships,
They're
where
what, sorry?
half-hearted relationships, half-hearted. They're 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Oh, rigids.
Rigids are. So
Right, that's true.
because because they're like, oh, this person, is this the right person? And we're making the right decision? Is there somebody else better? Is there
Ah.
somebody else better around the corner?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so
It's the Tinder dilemma.
it is, and it can be
Yeah.
really painful for a rigid because they don't know how to, because they get start a relationship and they can already have 1 foot out. They're already planning an escape plan because their partner's not perfect to them. So it's like, oh, they don't brush their teeth correctly, or whatever it is. Like there's some nuanced thing that they'll
Yeah,
hold
yeah.
against the partner, which will eventually leads to the trajectory of relationship doom. And then
Yeah, wow.
in other relationships as well, like in business and anything, it's like they're already doomed because the perfectionist component is like, you're not perfect, therefore I don't want you in my life, which doubles back to childhood, usually in teenage years, where your
Mm.
parents are like, you're not perfect to me, and I'm going to hold my love back from you because you're not perfect, because you're not who I want you to be. I'm going to hold back my love from you.
Wow. It's like the rigid parent makes the rigid child, and then the rigid child makes it's just this whole thing, right?
Loop.
And it's a catch 22, right? Because well, it's so interesting because we have these ways of being, and I've always well, at least I've thought this. I've always been this way of like very like antsy, so to speak, with certain things, and and it can lead to OCD. If it's untamed, as in like if you're low on sleep, or if you're perhaps I mean the colloquial term, not the literal DSM definition, but like like you become, for example, when I used to drink, right? I used to go out and party a lot back in my day, and I would, and the next day, like I would be extremely like OCD, like very like just, like I'd be lackadaisical in the sense of like, oh, I don't want to do anything, but at the same time, very like neurotic, and like this needs to be a certain way, this needs to be a certain way. So it's like almost like all mental illnesses are just a exacerbation of the source problem, or the source misbalance rather than problem. All right, and I wanted to let you to speak into this, but I feel like the solution, or the holy grail, or the end point is like, hey, you are who you are, but let's see if you're able to shift that in the sense of being able to be rigid when you want to be rigid, and not be rigid when you don't want to be rigid. It's like, hey, I see those imperfections, but it's like when you see someone who's saying something wrong and you're just like, oh, I want to correct them, but it's like, no. Or like when your ego gets in the way, right? Because I've had this a lot recently, and I've just been like practicing letting go, where a person that's showing off or talking themselves up, they're like, oh, this, I did this, and I'm just like, and they're saying something that contradicts what they said the week before, but I'm just like, let it go, let it go. Sometimes it's good to be just a silent person at dinner watching people, like your partner Cassie. She's just always just like, she will say a thing and then boom, out. She just watches the whole time, and unless you antagonize her to get her to come back. But
We both
there's
know,
great,
we both know what happens there.
yeah, yeah. So I'm thinking to myself, like, and I love your thoughts on all those things I said, and it's a bit of a word salad from a rigid.
Yeah,
Uh,
word salad, bro.
it's
Put that salad in order. I want to see my
I,
cucumbers over here, my carrots over here.
I need to
Yeah,
right now. Yeah, it's just like I was going to say one last thing. It's like there's this meta awareness that needs to happen, and I feel like that's the solution for most characterology types, right?
yeah, it is. And the meta awareness comes from reducing the rigidity in the body. So there's only
Ooh,
enough mental bandwidth in
can you say
order
that
for
one
you
more
to
time?
try. Um,
The meta
uh,
awareness comes from.
the awareness comes from dealing with the rigidity in the body.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I just want to write that down. That's a
No,
nice
it's all
one.
right. Yeah, cool. Because without dealing with the rigidity in the body, there's not enough mental bandwidth for you to mentally control your rigid, right? So you can try and you can know all these things. You can read all the books. You can be like, oh no, they make all the to-do lists. Oh, if I feel rigid, just stop. It's not how it works. Like your body is the impulse to be rigid is built into the cellular. That's how you perform. That's how you've survived. So it's a defense as well as a winning formula, if that makes sense. So it's a defense that it protects you from being like humiliated or being made wrong, and it also rewards you at the same time because you know at some point you'll hit that achievement goal. But the other thing for rigids, this is where I'm going to, is not being able to celebrate when they hit that achievement milestone.
Yeah, you've said to me before.
Yeah, so like being able to like, oh, I hit that goal, like I've released that podcast for the first time, like I,
Mm.
I broke up with that partner in that relationship, or I started a new relationship, or I'm getting back on the bandwagon of something. It's being able to celebrate that moment is important to interrupt that perpetual perfection machine that's built into them.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. Because here's the thing, right? Like you just, um, it's almost like a belief that things ought to be the way they ought to be, and if it's anything less, then you're the problem, right? Because I noticed that myself as well. It's like this needs to be a certain way. This is a certain standard. Here's the criteria it needs to happen. If it's not this way, then it's shit. But if it's this way, it's just how it's supposed to be. It's not like, wow, look at what you've done here, man. Like, look at the work you've done. And I think that, do you know what type A personality is?
I don't know.
So type A, let's actually look it up right now because I want to be
Let's ask
less rigid.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'm just gonna search it up now. What it means for those, because I don't want to give someone a definition of. I want to give someone a proper definition, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's
So I'm just gonna share my screen.
great.
Chrome tab. Yeah, cool. So a personality type characterized by ambition, impatience, and competitiveness, and thought to be susceptible to stress and heart disease. That's very specific. Heart disease.
Well, interesting for rigid in characterology, rigid is a disconnected heart and pelvis, and rigid suffer
Right.
from heartbreak. So it's really
Here it is.
challenging
Here,
for
can you see that?
yeah, beautiful screen share, bro. I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
in characterology, it's really challenging for a rigid to love one person.
Yeah.
So
Right.
they split. They can have emotional connection to one person and have a sexual connection to another, and that's heartbreak. Really, ultimately it's heartbreak, where they just don't know how to feel. They don't know how to be authentic because they were never loved to be authentic as a child. They had to become something in order to be loved,
Mm.
and that's self-betrayal.
Yeah.
Self-betrayal is
Wow.
all heart.
So it becomes a bit difficult, because we start thinking about these things, and you know, and asking a spiritual person, and they know the answer to this, but it's what is the ideal person?
Yeah, what is the ideal
there,
person? Yeah, I
I
can
mean,
answer
there
that.
is. Yeah, please, please.
Yeah, so the ideal person is someone who has enough self-trust in themselves to know that they don't know what they don't know. There's stuff out there
Mm.
they don't know that they know that they don't know, and there's stuff out there that they don't know that they don't know. And they're also efficient in acting on what they do know. So that's the ideal person, is that you just go through life trusting this instinctual nature, even if it gets you into trouble, even if you make a mistake, right? It's like, cool. Oh, do I still want to be that person? No, I don't. Cool. What do I need to do to iterate that behavior so I'm not that anymore?
Hmm.
But if you do it and you do get in trouble and you like getting in trouble, then do that. But you need to honor yourself in that whole process.
That's scary, man.
It is scary.
Hmm. Why is it scary for?
It's scary because it means that you're free. It's free.
Hmm.
People assume that they want freedom until they get it, and then it's terrifying. It's the ultimate form of free will. You are who you are. You are embodying, and you're doing everything that you're doing, and it verges on anarchy. And anarchy is terrifying for people who want control, right? Yeah, have a good drink. That was a drink-worthy comment. But yeah, and it can be scary. We say we want freedom, or people want freedom, but when you actually are truly free, the need for authority diminishes. The need for control and policy diminishes because everybody's operating at their own authentic level, and at some point you reach a commonality where everybody's so authentic. They don't want to be nasty. They don't want to be like out there creating chaos deliberately. They're like, no, I
Yeah.
want connection. I want to be loved for who I am. Like, but in order to be loved for who you are, you've got to know who you are. And in order to know who you are, you need to know how to trust yourself.
Mic drop.
Mm.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, because it's so funny when you say that, right? Because it all ties back into you see a traditional conservative. They want control. They desire the control. Things need to be how they've always been. Then you have the libertarians who are we need to try new things all the time. We need to keep trying new things. It's like one is uncomfortable with orderliness. The other is prone to chaos. Like just wants the kind of mixy kind of type. Where do you lean on the political spectrum? Just out of curiosity.
That's a great question. I am slightly more conservative.
Yeah,
I,
interesting.
I am more conservative than in on the political spectrum, Luke. I think
Mm,
that spectrum changes depending on how far left you go.
yeah, yeah.
So
Because if
the
you go
more,
to a communist country, right, in China, conservative is how they are right now.
yeah,
Libertarian is being more democracy based, so it depends on the country. But I mean, let's use America as an example because
yeah,
it's a bit
America,
more. No,
yeah,
yeah,
totally more conservative. Yeah, I
yeah,
see that
okay,
structure is an important part. Like, and it's not. It's more respecting the system, respecting structure, as opposed to wanting to
yeah.
abide by it. So structure has a
Ah,
place,
nice, nice.
right?
Mm,
So knowing that, contributing to tax and not that I like tax, but having structure, like having systems like the law, for example. Law is a great one.
mm,
We're having a legal system that helps protect the innocent to a degree, and that you're guilty, you're innocent until proven guilty, like that kind of mechanism. And having
mm,
having a court of law where you adjudicate, well, what really happened here. And we
mm,
both know people that have been through like the court system, and I feel like it's really important to expose what's there. But I also think there's also elements that are missing, like there's
yeah.
transparency that's missing, and then you can pay to keep evidence out of court, like settle outside of court. It would be really important for people to see what was in that case, right?
Mm,
Or in that discussion. So I am more conservative purely because I see there's respect. There's respect in systems and structure.
yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one because the further you go down, right? Like I don't know if you watch some of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Bits and
like
pieces.
yeah, when I watched that, like it was just so fascinating to watch. Like I was that was in August. No, it was in April last year, I think, April May, and I watched like almost the whole thing, like the whole court day hearing thing for the whole 4 weeks or 3 weeks, when it was. I think it was 4 weeks, then 1 week off, and I'm just like, wow, like you think you know something, right? You think you know how the legal system works, and of course, like you don't know how the legal system works. I mean, but you have an idea of like, yep, you go to like court and they judge you, and that's what happens. It's like, no, 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 no. Hang on a second. There's like there's counterclaims, there's claims, there's counter claims, and there's like the rebuttals to those, and then there's witnesses, and then there's testing the witnesses for their evidence, and then rebuttaling the witnesses. It's just this whole thing, and this is just a defamation lawsuit, right?
Totally.
Think about criminal. Think about when it's like someone for the death sentence or something like that. Like there's just, whew, it's fucking
and then
crazy.
and then the more money you have, you can delay. So you can actually
Yeah,
a siege, so like a small claim or something that you want to like a sue a larger company. They can just
yeah,
keep you in a perpetual loop of delaying, which it's like a battle of attrition where whoever has the most
yeah,
money wins. So
yeah.
there's an imbalance in the justice system in that.
I find it so strange, like you go to court and you see like it's the worst. well, I don't want to push onto what I think about it. Well, I am pushing onto it because some people love it, and to a degree, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. Like I love that the rigidity of like, no, you said this, no, you said this. Everyone when I was younger said you should be a lawyer, but when you think about it, it's like that's the darkest parts of humanity in there, and there's so much like to use a theme before rigidity. It's like yes, Your Honor, like just so like stifled. It's like where's the Jesus, where's the release there? You
Yeah,
know?
the humanity piece. And I've
Yeah.
and I've pre-qualified lawyers before, and they're one of the hardest to work with because
Why
they
is that?
can't see
Yeah.
beyond the rigidity, right? So like, and this they struggle in relationships a lot because there's high working hours, and their brain is hardwired to think logically. So when it comes to the relationship dynamic, they're like, oh, but that doesn't make sense. But this and that. So they think that they can argue themselves into relationships. Like I was
Mm,
pre-qualifying someone a few weeks ago, and she found a guy on online. Oh no, she met him on the street somewhere,
right.
and he said to her that he wasn't interested in having a relationship, right? And she was smitten with this guy. So again, this is heart and pelvic split, okay?
Mm,
So
mm,
where the pelvis is telling you, no, this guy's really attractive. This is the guy, and then his heart was closed, but her heart's trying to make it work. And she was having conversations with this guy saying, no, like, we're good. We can make this work. We can do this thing, you know? She's the one over invested in the relationship because she's trying to argue herself. She thinks she can use the same lawyer type skill set into persuading someone to be in a relationship with her. I'm saying it's not, the guy's told you he's not in a ready for a relationship. Don't waste any energy on him, but we can make it work. So I just left her. So I didn't pre-qualify into my program because she just wasn't ready to work with me. So cool.
mm.
Maybe you need some more pain and suffering in order to see that the trajectory that you're on to have a kid in your 40s. You need help, and I'm the one that can do it, but you don't want my help. You're too smart.
And that's what we're talking about before about just letting go, just walking away, being able to say, like, hey, this person needs to suffer.
Mhm.
And some people that hear this be like, what do you mean? Like, no one deserves to suffer. We need to relieve everyone of their suffering. It's like, how do you know what's best for someone?
Exactly.
How do you know what's best for someone? So, but I wanted to ask on that. You brought something interesting that popped to my mind, which is where does rationality go wrong, if at all? You can
No,
say no.
it does, Luke. It does. Well, okay, here we go.
Can you just pause on that 1 second? I'm gonna grab some water. Hang on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Paused.
Go for gold.
Yeah. So with where does the rational go wrong?
Rationality.
Rationality go wrong.
Mm.
Yeah, it goes wrong when we assume that because it looks rational on paper, that it's correct. It's right. It's unquestionable. And this boils down to the sciences. I use science as a really good example because of the types of science. Okay, so
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got mathematics, which is like a really like it's a rigid science. Then you start going down the path of like physics, yeah, cool, and quantum physics all over the place. Not all over the place, but there's elements of like quantum physics. Like we can't really nail everything down for quantum physics. Then we go into biology, and we still have these questions around how certain things biologically react. I remember listening to a podcast a while ago when someone says a cascade happens, the cytokine cascade, it's cascade is code for we don't know what happens, but it
Mm.
happens. Something happens.
Yep.
And then you've got psychology, which is another soft science as well. So each science has got, you get getting softer and softer and softer.
Mm.
So when rationale fails is when you start to apply the same brush stroke that you would to mathematics to
Mm-hmm.
something else that's a little bit more nebulous, that we're still
Mm-hmm.
iterating, that we still don't really know. Um, and then you have people swear by it, this is the rationale, this is the thing. But really, what you're saying is, don't tell me how I'm not allowed to let go. Don't tell me I need to lose control of this, because underneath rationale is irrational. And if you're irrational, you're seen as crazy, unless it's that craziness is channeled into some kind of creative thing, and then you're a genius. So rationale fails where irrationality is discounted as just as important.
Yeah, well, because there's both. There's a duality that's needed there. And I have a question for you. What if one possesses both those traits, where
Well,
they're creative and irrational, but also extremely rational?
well, we're both the same, bro. We're that. You and I are that. We've both got
Mm,
that, right? Right?
mm,
We can lose control. We know when we can lose control. We can consciously do it,
yeah.
and we're both geniuses.
Mm,
So there's an element of neuroticism in geniusness and irrationality in geniuses, which allows for daydreaming, right, and fantasy.
mm,
And without those things, like what's the point of being human if you can't be irrational?
mm.
So yeah.
What's the old tale of like the warp and the woof? Like one goes over, one holds the other in place, one or the other. And it's like if you zoom into I think there was like a bit of fabric or something like that. You zoom in one level, it's like it's complete order. It's like everything's all lined up. You zoom in further, it's chaos, order, chaos, order, chaos. Everything exists in one thing. You can't have rationality without irrationality.
Mhm.
So I think you have like, and I'm obviously, using what's the word? Using a broad statement, but people, like Sam Harris, who to me appear, right, defining the word appear, I don't know exactly, appear to be someone who is looking for complete rationality in the face of religiosity, right? Like you need to have rationality as a replacement for the religion of, the ambiguous. And that's what saves us. And that irrationality is what destroys us. A lot of people fall for that, myself included. It's like everything has to be rational. Like the conversation I had down at Wollongong with you and you and Cassie, well, I mean more Cassie, about how the science and the science of everything. It's like, well, where's there room for the mystical or the mystical? It's like there is no room for it. So
Mm. Yeah, I love that, bro. And speaking to Sam Harris, like I do see that there's a level of control that he needs to be a certain way, and it's his brand too. Like now he's built his whole identity around this, and maybe he might do a Neil Strauss and do like a kind of like evolution here, but going from who he was to who he is now. But his whole brand is built on rationale. And I mean, and I don't know if he's ever had any psychedelics or any kind of experience with something that he has to let go. He
he
has,
has, yeah,
right?
many.
So, do you know if it's LSD or shrooms? Know what he's had?
Well, I know that he's done like he's done lots of Vipassana. Like I'm just giving you the smaller ones, the high ones.
Yeah.
Lots of Vipassana, lots of, I think, cave meditations in darkness. It does mention doing psilocybin, I think it was, but again, don't quote me on this.
Cool. All
Let's
good.
Should we research it?
Yeah, please check it out. Yeah. And interesting you mentioned Vipassana, bro. I'm going to keep talking while you're looking that up.
Yeah, please, please.
So Vipassana, for someone who's a rigid, Vipassana is not good. Vipassana as a technique, because
Right.
so it Vipassana denies the body of experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more control. So in a
Right.
Vipassana, you can't get up and scream and shake and carry on, which you might want to. So I see Vipassana is another form of control. For someone who uses it for long term, it's not healthy. Like anyone who comes to me who's either rigid or has a schizoid injury, I don't recommend Vipassana,
Do
because
you define schizoid injury?
yeah, a schizoid injury is someone who escapes into their mind, to
Is
escape
that
from
is
their
that me?
reality. Yeah, but like everyone's got all five types.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Can you go through the five types and tell us
yeah,
what they are?
sure. So the five types you've got
This is characterology, right?
Characterology, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Wilhelm
Cool.
Reich, Alexander Lowen. So you've got the five types are orality, schizoid,
Morality,
orality,
orality. Yeah,
oral,
yeah,
oral,
yeah, yeah,
orality,
yeah.
It's also, and then you got uh, the masochist or the
Hmm.
endurer. Then you have the rigid, and then you have the psychopath.
That's four, no?
Well, the oral, intuitive. Did I say intuitive?
No, you didn't mention
Okay,
intuitive.
intuitive. Cool. So there's a schizoid. The schizoid's
Interesting.
the intuitive. So
Yep.
schizoid slash intuitive.
Yep. Yep.
So each one of these defenses has its own body shape pattern. So that
Yep.
they appear physically first, and
Right.
then they have defensive relating abilities too. So they have a
Wow.
particular way of how they relate to other people and relate to themselves.
Hmm.
Um, but everyone's got all five. Like when you're born, you have like all five, and then as you grow up, each one becomes dominant, and then you might have a secondary dominant. But then
Hmm.
then how you want to approach into becoming remembering who you are, you deal with the most present defense.
Hmm.
So sometimes rigidity is the most present defense, and then when that goes, sometimes schizoid will appear, and then you look at that one, and then when schizoid goes, masochism appears, and it
Hmm.
goes down the line until you feel the most you, and there's nothing else left. You're just you. There's no more defenses. You're so aware of your defenses. It's just you just
Is
you.
is that individuation at that point?
That's individuation.
Right. And we can go into what that means, but I wanted to touch on those five types. You said there's a physical, and then there's manifestations in your own life. So with the orality, what's the
Mhm.
physical for that? Can you describe someone who's, and what do you mean by
Yeah.
physical? Do you mean their body?
Yeah, so orality physically, so their eyes, straight away their eyes look like they're hungry, like they want to. Who's in our life that's an oral?
Can you
Okay,
give give me a celebrity, and we'll show. I'll look them up right now.
okay, let's go. Oral celebrity.
If you can't think of
Um,
one, it's cool.
no, no, no. Who's the guy that did Walter Schmitty? Who's the
Walter Schmidt.
over talker?
Walter White.
No, no. Over someone who's an over talker who talks to. I think it was show host
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. Not really. He
Mm-hmm.
does have it, but not as he's more rigid schizoid than
Right.
orality. Um,
Let's go to other ones, and you can maybe tell us about those ones afterwards. So let's go with masochist, and what are their physical? Give me
yeah.
like a celebrity for them.
All
Do you
right,
know one
a
for them?
masochist, dude. All right, so you've got Tim. Who's that comedian? Tim. Chubby people are masochists. So,
Oh, right.
who's a
Tim Minchin.
masochist? Tim, not Tim Minchin. No, he's rigid. Uh,
Mhm.
no,
It's all good, man. No stress.
I'm being rigid, bro. um, he's a comedian.
Give me who's Donald Trump? Which one's Donald Trump?
Donald Trump is a psychopath um,
Okay,
with masochistic.
but define that because psychopath is different in this context.
Oh, totally. So this is old German. This old German technology. So old German language. Right. So Trumpy. So psychopathy appears in him. Um, any picture of Trumpy. So he's masochistic. So
Can you see my
who he
screen?
is. That's a great. I can see your screen. Yeah. So how it appears is his body shape is it's more um, rectangular, but if you look wider at him, he's got a bit of a belly. So he's got a masochistic psychopathy. So psychopathy needs two types in order to work. So
Mm-hmm.
he's got masochism and rigidity.
Wow.
So what a psychopath does is they've got like great, love it. They've got what's known as like a cobra type energy, and when you step on them, when you get in their way, this thing will come. It'll lunge at you. It'll be
Mm.
really intimidating. Tony Robbins has this. Um, he's much more of a rigid psychopath. Tony Robbins. Like
Yeah.
his body shape is more triangular. And
Yeah. They have similar body shapes, these two.
yeah. Who else? Um,
It's a very rigid meditation position.
yeah, and it's performative. Like rigids are really
Yeah.
performative, right? You can tell straight away it's performative, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a performance. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Oh well, holy crap! I did not search for Tony Robbins and Donald Trump, but here they are together.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
wow.
the typical wounding for if I was working with either two of these guys in a professional setting, I would need to build their trust first.
Yeah,
So someone
wow.
who has this injury, they're looking for betrayal. Any smell of betrayal, they'll like get rid of you. So trying to get
Mm.
on either of these guys' good side or being able to be trusted by them would be an effort. So they would continuously test your trust to see if you're trustworthy. And you can see that in Donald Trump's entourage, he's always giving people the flick. The minute he thinks that they're betraying him, out, out of his whatever it is that's there.
But is that more a practical thing in the sense of like, hey, like he's just been in that position so many times before because he's a celebrity, right? Doesn't isn't every celebrity going to be like that?
Yes and no. So I think if you enter celebrity status, you're going to
Mm.
assume that people only want to love you because you're a celebrity. And this is
Like
the
Kanye West.
like Kanye, and this is the rigid piece. So because rigids don't trust who they are and they don't feel that they're lovable at the core, they believe everybody loves them for what they do for them.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
wow.
oh, you don't love me for who I am. You just love me because I'm a musician. I'm the president. I'm Tony Robbins. I'm this. I'm that. I'm that. You didn't actually love me for who I am because I don't know who I am because I pretended to be something for most of my life.
Oh, wow. That's huge, man. That's really huge. Because a lot of people feel that way, that's not a rare thing. That's not like a how would you say, like off the cuff thing. Like a lot of people feel that way. Like,
They
do you
do.
really love me? Do you really love me?
They do. And it's a
That's
rigid injury.
mm,
So they might not have the body shape of the rigid, but it's
mm.
a rigid injury that happens usually in the teenage years where the betrayal that occurs in early childhood, the pattern continues and it really solidifies in the teenage years.
Wow. That's huge, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I felt that a lot of my relationships as well. It's like, do you really love me? Like, is it really me or is it something else? So how does one move through that? Like, what's the kind of, is there a solution?
yeah. There is.
Mm.
The solution is
Work
first
with
of all,
John.
working with me is one.
Yeah.
Um, the other piece is like a lot of this technology comes from a modality called core energetics and bioenergetics.
Mm. Okay.
So core energetic and bioenergetic practitioners will have this toolkit. They might not be as advanced as me, but they'll still have it. Like I
Mm.
studied under someone who worked with John Parakos, who's like the next in line from like so you have Wilhelm Reich,
Mm.
Alexander Lowen, John Parakos, and then this guy, my ex-mentor.
Yeah, right.
So, so there's a direct lineage there um, from from those teachings. But yeah, the really boils down to if what I'm saying lands for you is either taking it up with a therapist or if you want to come and see me, then come and see me and have a conversation. Right.
Mm.
I think the thing for a rigid is being able to acknowledge they can't do it on their own
Yeah, yeah.
because there's just too many blind spots. The ego, it's a defense that you're dealing with. It's trying to convince a crab to peel off its own shell.
What are the defenses?
So the defenses for a rigid, oh,
Let's get juicy. Go on. Dive in.
let's see. I've got a
Are
list.
you,
I've got a list, bro. Like, so straight away,
you can share
uh,
your screen if you like, if you wanted to. Are you able to?
No, it's all right, bro. So
Okay.
the defenses for a rigid, so they've got internal sayings that they might carry.
Do tell.
Yeah, so like, it's called a negative intent. So a rigid will be I won't surrender,
Yeah.
right? And then the illusion, like the illusion of their character, is if I hold back my heart, it will never be broken again. And if I don't give you my heart, I can still be sexual.
Ooh. Unpack that, bro.
The second piece,
The second one. The second one.
yeah, cool. So there's a heart and pelvic split in rigidity,
Yep.
which means that um, at some
Actually,
point,
can sorry, just to
yeah,
cut you off there. Can we just define real quick, like just for my own sake as well,
yeah, yeah.
what specifically you mean by rigidity?
What do you
Be
mean?
rigid with it. So, rigid for me means someone who is needs things to be a certain way, otherwise they won't feel comfortable.
Yep,
Is that accurate?
yep, yep,
Perfect. Cool.
yep,
Carry on then.
yep, yep. Yeah, yeah, yes, they'll want to control their environment in some way, shape, or form, or they will not control their environment and control themselves. So
It's
they'll
also
bring
like
this
a
containment, like a containment of feeling.
right. Is it almost like they get off on order as well? Like they ardently desire the order.
They can get off on the order and judging things that are not in order,
Yeah. Wow.
like
Wow.
but
They have this vision of how
condemning
things
it.
should be.
Yeah, yeah, it's how it should be. You're wrong. It's a condemnation because judgment's required. Being human is judgment is important in being human, but there's a condemning in it that comes in. It's like you're inherently flawed because you're not perfect. This thing isn't perfect. You did it, therefore you're not perfect.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
So
That land?
yeah, made perfect sense. You're talking about the pelvic split.
Yes, the heart and pelvic split, and this is where it gets it starts to tinker into a little bit of spirituality, a little bit of
Go
chakra
for gold.
system. Yeah, cool.
Go,
All
go
right.
go for gold, man. Like, just so you know, like, there's no audience to attend to as far as like, I need to say it a certain way so it makes sense. Just like say it how you want to say it, man.
Yeah, great. So with the heart to pelvic split, there's a neurochemical link between what your heart feels and what your sexual desires are. What happens is in the teenage years, usually around when you start hitting into puberty, there can be something that happens with the caregiver dynamic where your sexuality is not received. And sometimes it can
Mm,
happen it can also happen between like a sister or a brother where there can be an inappropriate cross generational bond with sexuality and love. So what happens is that if a parent can healthily deal with their child's sexuality and not reject it, because it's natural for a child to become attracted to their parent, and this is we talking about Oedipal complex type stuff.
ooh.
So if a parent can just be with their child's attraction and not make it wrong, then it doesn't reject them for their sexuality.
Parents or parent?
Parent, it can be both. It can be both.
Okay.
But usually, typically in the heterosexual relationship dynamic, it's the opposite sex parent.
Gotcha.
In this dynamic, so that split, having your sexuality rejected, like loving your parent and then having your sexuality rejected from the same parent, and this is like rejected in like it's like you are wrong. You are wrong to be attracted to me in that way. Because what's happening is biologically your body is new sensations, new things, new emotions new ways of being are coming in. They're just looking for someone to
Mm,
help them navigate it.
mm.
So when you remove the morality, like this is where conservatism goes wrong, when you remove the morality from the situation and you can objectively look at what's going on, you can hold space for your child to reorientate what their attraction is.
Yeah. Wow. 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 And speaking to that, man, because that's a controversial Well, I mean, specifically the morality stuff, right? Emma, you said to me a few weeks ago, you're like, I was trying to tackle with this, like doing something, I did something wrong, like, oh, like I was dishonest or this or that, whatever. You're like, just let go of morality, man. Let go of this morality. It's like, I'm like, what? Like, how? It's just a part of it's inbuilt, part of it's like, just empathy and compassion, and it's just natural mirror neurons in your brain. But also it's actually like a bit of um it's like those post development character types that are obsessed with success, like I'm the five friends, but it's like the Jordan Peterson philosopher types who are like, no, like this is wrong, this is right, tell the truth no matter what, like speak the truth, like rule number 3 or 4, whatever it is. It's like, where does that go wrong? I know we're going all over the place, but fuck it. I mean, what is what's wrong with having morality, and where does it go wrong?
Yeah, there's actually nothing wrong with having morality. Where it goes wrong is where you're taking on board somebody else's morality. So
Okay.
so when you trust yourself, when you embody who you are,
Mm.
then morality automatically appears. It's not something that needs to be applied from a rule set from like the Bible or some kind of dogma, right?
Nice.
Because when you know yourself enough, you respect other people, like because the other person is automatically you at some level. So the morality just comes in there. Like if I make a mistake or I do something wrong, I want to apologize or I want to repair. Right? It's not that I want to take advantage. I don't want to take advantage of people or get away with something. It's like no, the integrity, but your inner integrity doesn't allow you to try and weasel your way out of it. It's like there's the whole visceral thing of being in integrity with what your values are. So if you don't know what your values are, then your morality is already questionable.
Yeah, I
And
think
it,
to add that as well, like it's
yeah,
the values aren't just this logical kind of a John DeMartini sheet you fill out. It's like it's in the body as well, right?
in the body as well, Luke. It's in the body as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because I hear that, man. Because I think that when you try and force morality on a situation, you're actually pushing down the natural function of morality. So it's like, who are you really when you're trying to be this moral person? It's like maybe you are actually that person who's okay, who's has that natural, like that's the wrong thing to do, but you're trying to be that person, which makes you less of that person, which then becomes this forceful push to be that person.
totally.
So I hear that, man. I hear that. I hear the rigidity in that.
Yeah, and rigids are great at it. Like they'll be so
Mm,
performative for
mm.
their entire lives, but deep down they just want to be monsters. Like the part because like in rigidity, like if I was to compare another rigid, like Hitler was a rigid. So
Yeah, you can tell.
in total, right? So he in his childhood, who he was, and he rigid. A lot of his team were rigids. And what happens is when you get a rigid with a belief system that they align with, that is aligned with perfection, they're ruthless.
Ooh, that's why they did what they did.
And the justification, morality goes out the window because they're so self righteous in their rigidity, nothing can stop them.
Mm. So do you believe that these specific things that are in the shadows, so to speak, in most of the world, in most, because you have now, like you have trauma, like, oh, he's got trauma or this or that. And great, awesome. Awareness around all things are great. But do you feel like this is a missing piece? Like this is the next evolution
Oh yeah,
in changing the world?
oh yeah, totally, totally, totally. So I got
Yeah,
someone
wow.
that I pre-qualified today, and she's at the end of she can't get any more with her psychotherapist.
Yeah,
Right, that's
yeah.
it. She's hit the limit, right? And I have the tools to take you to that next level because psychotherapists only look at the world from a particular frame, right?
Mm,
I know that
mm,
there's so much more to an individual than what the DSM is going to tell you or what your parents have told you, and to be unleashed in that space requires you to confront that all of your relationships could change, your whole life situation could change, right? And that's terrifying
mm,
for a lot of people that aren't ready for it. So they prefer just to stay small. Tell me, DSM, what am I? Give me the medication, do me the thing, like whatever it is, keep me small. Because when someone's unleashed, it impacts all of the family systems, impacts the work system, impacts everything. So there's one person changing impacts the system too.
mm.
Doubling back to who's the oral, Russell Brand. Russell Brand is
Well,
a perfect example of an oral. He's an oral schizoid. His dominant is oral. His secondary is schizoid. So you can't
yeah,
shut the
well.
motherfucker up. That's an oral.
Hmm.
And we know orals in our community, right? They just
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
how to,
yeah.
just don't know. They can't listen.
Yeah, well. It's almost like, are we living in a rigid world? Are we living in a world created by rigid people, rather?
Hmm. Yeah. If you want to get shit done, get a rigid. Like so in the context of business, like my mentor said, you could design a team based on characterology. So you could look at someone and go, cool, I know that person's going to be excel at networking. That person's going to excel at getting things done and being perfect around it. That person's the you want them to handle customer service. You want that person to come up with the ideas, and you want that person to lead the team.
Yeah, wow. Huge.
Huge.
So where does the five big personality types go wrong in line with this characterology?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the personality types. Like there's the A B C D whatever it is. This like
No, no, so this is agreeability, right? So you have
ah
agreeability,
yeah
neuroticism, it's all a scale, extroversion, introvert, extroversion, conscientiousness,
yeah. It doesn't include the body.
and interesting.
Doesn't so it's all theory based on behavior, and that behavior could be a defense. It could be a trauma response.
Yeah, wow.
So at the core of all that, so it doesn't take into account what your body's doing. If you look at Jordan Peterson, like he doesn't like he's rigid, and
Mm,
he's needed medication in order to move through his depression, right? And now he's on a carnivore diet. I don't know how long that's going to last for him, but
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
he's tried in order to not look at what's really going on in his body will cost him.
Yeah, wow. So so would you say you're more in body work than you are in relationships, no?
Ah, good question. Um, I'd say it was body psychotherapy. So
Gotcha.
core energetics and bioenergetics are body psychotherapy. So you combine like a psychodynamic, which is
Yep.
looking at the past, your past experiences, create your present and the future, and the body piece. So
Mm-hmm.
what you know of who you are and who you've been is stored in
Mm-hmm.
your body, as well as your mind and your heart and a whole bunch of other things. But yeah.
Mm. Perfect. That makes sense. So here's some examples of big five personality tests. So there's openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's all based in the mind.
It's
Hmm.
all based on the mind, and like people also take on board like when you are an introvert. Oh, I'm an introvert. Okay, well, how much of that is a defense? Oh, I'm an extrovert. Okay, cool. How much of that is like you just pretend to hide yourself from who you really are? Because someone who's an introvert, I think I've made a post about this a while ago. They
Mm.
might be so shy and socially repressed, so they just take on the label. Oh, I'm an introvert. I'm just going to be that instead of owning that. No, there's actually another person inside of that. You actually everyone's just an ambivert, but just being able to
Ooh.
own that, and usually introverts struggle with creating boundaries,
Mm.
right? So instead of like being able to speak powerfully to I don't want that, I do want that, I'm just going to hide. I'm just going to be this person, right? Then an extrovert can be so overt in their boundaries, it can push other people away. But for an extrovert, they can be hiding this part of them that they don't want to reveal to anybody else.
There's a
So
different method to do it.
yeah, totally. It's another method of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I read a book, Quiet, by Susan Cain back in 2013. She was the big like introvert person on the scene at the time, and I read the book and identify as an introvert. I'm like, I'm an introvert, like, but I remember just wanting to be an introvert based on what it meant at the
Yeah,
time.
totally.
And but to speak into the science of it all, like there is some studies that show that. But then again, no, it's what came first, kind of thing, to show that the area that brings in stimulation was much smaller in an introvert's brain, meaning someone who identifies introvert had much smaller capacity for stimuli. I mean, they get overwhelmed much quicker. But then also, right, here's the thing: there's a third nervous system in the body called the social engagement system. Have you heard of that before?
Mm.
So there's like the parasympathetic, there's a sympathetic, then there's a social engagement system. And those who have social anxiety or who have a hard time communicating and speaking and connecting with people will often have a understimulated or dysregulated social engagement system, right? Now, why this happens, I don't remember the why, but I know based on that characteristic, or I have a hunch, an idea, that when I was younger, I had a very low social engagement system because I had really bad social anxiety. I remember walking through school and just feeling, how are you for time, by the way? You okay?
Yeah, I've got like a minute to go.
A minute? Okay, cool. Let's wrap it up, man.
Cool. Oh, I'd love to touch more into that too, bro. I think there's something in the anxiety piece, what nature nurture
Yeah, yeah,
in
sure.
that whole piece. I'd love to come back and have that unstitch more of that because I think it's really important for people to hear, like what's really you, and what have
Yep.
you created as you in order to feel safe and validated in the world.
I love that. Let's save that one for next time. Where can people find you, John? Where should they go?
Yeah, johnkaiherbert.com.au. Track me down on Facebook, track me down on Instagram, Google me, you will find me. John Kai Herbert is a one of a kind name, just like my services, they're one of a kind.
Oh, nice. I love it. Cool, man. I'll wrap this up now and we'll cut this bad boy up as well. And awesome to have you on, bro. Thanks for coming on.
You.
Bye bye.